EA invited several media outlets as well as a bunch of Battlefield content creators to dive into the Battlefield 2042 beta. So while those of you excited to play are getting ready to sink your teeth into the beta for the first time, here's a breakdown of what you can expect to see and our first impressions. And honestly, for the most part, it's pretty good. Battlefield 2042 comes out real soon, so if you want to stay in the know, be sure to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and hit that bell button. It's free. Let's dive in. The build that we had access to was the all-out warfare conquest mode on the Orbital map. You might remember that map from the trailers because it's the one with that giant rocket about to launch as a kind of levolution throughout each match. The only thing that stood out to me as something that might be a different experience than what we could obviously expect in the retail build was the fact that I was unable to zoom in on the map during the gameplay, but everything else seemed pretty par for the course. Also, in the matches that I was able to load into, there were a lot of AI bots. Like, a lot. And all I'll say on that for now is that they weren't like the Spartan bots from the Halo Infinite's tech preview. But more on that in just a bit. So what was the beta like? The short answer is fun. The combat felt snappy with adrenaline-fueled firefights. Returning to a pretty fast TTK in Battlefield made me feel really powerful, and combining the freestyle loadouts with the new specialists made me curious to experiment. Before we dive into the specialists, which are a huge part of 2042's identity, it is worth talking about the core gameplay loop and where 2042 fits on the spectrum of giving that Battlefield feel. The core gameplay loop is strong. We started out with limited weapons, but with enough usage, kills, XP gains, and ribbons earned, other weapons were unlocked within that class. Now, I mainly stuck to my tried and true assault rifle, simply swapping from full auto to single shots or burst fire on a situational basis. The gunplay was fun, and any firefight that I had, win or lose, was a thrilling moment for me. The gameplay was sullied a bit though, thanks to the AI bots, which in some matches were just everywhere, making me wonder where all the real players were at. There were some matchmaking issues during our hands-on time, so it probably was more of the fact that other players couldn't load in, which is why the game just kept filling it up with bots. And the bots were, as I'm sure you guessed it, a joke, unfortunately. The first multi-kill I got against them was awesome, yeah, but by the end of that 3-hour play session that we had, I was over the bots. They were just too easy. They stood still on ladders like idiots or didn't do any kind of evasive maneuvering. They just like four-headed the W key half the time the entire way. I'd be lying if I said I didn't die to a bot a couple of times, but just whatever, shut up. I had my reasons. The vehicles were plentiful as well, but weren't to my liking as much, mainly because it felt like the handling was still somewhat unpolished, or I didn't spend enough time tweaking the sensitivity settings on PC. I'm sure controller players may have had an easier time navigating, but most vehicles for me felt a little unwieldy on the terrain, with camera angles sometimes even hitching or clipping. That we can safely chalk up to it being more of a consequence of the beta build, rather than how vehicles will actually handle at launch. But that being said, you'd better get used to vehicles, even if you're usually on foot, because these maps, man, they're huge. We only played Orbital, which isn't even supposed to be the largest map, but that shit was still really big. Especially because firefights are now condensed into sectors and clusters, it is not uncommon to clear a squad off of an objective and then realize that all the firefights are on the complete other side of the map. Thankfully though, 2042 has a new vehicle call-in system, which I forgot about honestly until the final hour of the beta. The few times I used it, it was surprisingly intuitive. You pick from a menu what kind of vehicle you want, anywhere from the Boston Dynamics dog, known as Ranger, to a full-on tank, which will then be parachuted down to your location. There is a cooldown, so you can't just spam the vehicles willy-nilly, but it definitely felt nice to remember that there was an easy solution to getting out of no man's land if you didn't want to spend that time on foot. More time with this system will flesh out details and answer questions such as how often can a player spam the call-in system, or if there are any restrictions if too many members of your squad try to use it at the same time. My guess is since all of this is so new, it wasn't really being used as often, which would explain why anytime that I needed a vehicle, I had no issue getting access to one. Speaking of quality of life changes, the new attachment system is incredible. You essentially bring up a HUD that will let you adjust your gun's barrel, handle, or even scope, all on the fly. It took me some time to get used to it, but I don't know how we ever lived without it. We're gonna learn more once the open beta hits and we reach launch day, so specifics like how to pick specific attachments and certain slots on the interface will become more apparent in the future. For now though, I worked with what attachments the interface already had, and it was pretty solid. My favorite tactic was using the attachments favoring close quarter combat, and then after I would zipline my way up the skyscraper, swapping to longer sights to get a better angle and scout ahead on enemies further away from my squad. The versatility offered by this new system is genuinely awesome and will only be improved as the game launches. Since there have been a lot of breakdowns recently on the new specialist system from DICE, now is also a good time to break down how those specialists felt in practice. It is no secret that Battlefield tends to be unbalanced, for better or worse, and the specialist system is going to be no exception. Specialists' main draws are intrinsic traits and abilities that separate them from the rest of the pack, and in the beta, we had the option to play as McKay, Boris, Falk, and Casper. The reason these specialists feel like they could dramatically shift the sandbox is that with abilities, you are basically creating a hero system like Overwatch or Apex Legends, and that means a new dynamic to the meta. You're not only thinking about weapons anymore, but how each weapon now pairs with an ability. This is not a bad thing. I actually really like the system a lot despite the potential balance issues, because the more factors that weigh into a build, the more meaningful the build feels. And right now, specialists feel pretty meaningful in very subtle ways. I mostly played with McKay despite getting some assist kills with Boris's deployable turret and trying to remember that I could instant heal myself with Falk's medic syringe. Casper, unfortunately, I didn't do much besides glitch his spy drone into the ground, but McKay, man, that is my guy. McKay's intrinsic ability is that he can move faster when he is aiming weapons, as well as traveling faster across zip lines, which is really cool. I am partial to mobility type heroes and classes, so McKay felt really good to work with. I tried messing with his grapple hook ability to mixed results, but I know folks out there will have some awesome highlight reels using it. That being said, the grapple hook is strong, letting you scale certain heights and reduce travel time up larger buildings, or you can quickly get out of a choke point into an advantageous position. And lastly, you know I have to talk about that rocket launchpad Levolution and those damn tornadoes. The short of it is that the tornadoes were super cool, like hilariously awesome to see. In practice, it was weird because I couldn't see my HUD or get an angle on anyone and it was just chaos, but also I didn't care. I just saw the tornado and I sprinted as fast as I possibly could to try and get swept up by it because it looked fun, which kind of cuts to the heart of Battlefield's character, right? The chaos creates this entertainment. The tornado made some good progress across the map from one sector to the next, and I can't wait to see the other types of extreme weather, such as the desert sandstorms. Now, the rocket launch felt like a Levolution, but also not, because there wasn't any significant map devastation as far as I could tell. There is a way to destroy the rocket before it launches, which I think has world building story implications for why the two factions are fighting on the orbital map in the first place. But ultimately, it just had this like audio timer ticking down most of the map before it launched. It looked awesome, and now I want to see the other maps' Levolution style turning points for sure. There is so much more to break down about the beta, such as Easter eggs and guides on how to maximize the specialist's unique talents. The beta is open for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and EA Play owners, as well as anyone who pre-ordered the game. For now, all you need to really take away from this vid though is that Battlefield is back and should be a bunch of fun for everyone. I hope you guys enjoy the beta, and definitely be sure to come back to this channel in the coming days as we'll be throwing up a lot more Battlefield 2042 content. Until next time.